Welcome, everyone. My name is Emily. I am the host of those Startup Ecosystems Unlocked series. This is our third edition of this series of webinars. The first one was on the topic of how to build niche tech ecosystems and support niche tech ecosystems from around the world with the participation of the Abu Dhabi Early Childhood Authority and Stanley Black & Decker, both of those organizations supporting niche tech ecosystems in Abu Dhabi on the topic of early childhood development, and in the southeast of the US in when it comes to Stanley Black & Decker, also on the topic of diversity and diverse founders. The second of those webinars was on the topic of universities. And here we had our and the way universities contribute to healthy startup ecosystems. And in this case, we had our partners at USC and SDSU, so University of Southern California, and the San Diego State University participating in this webinar, talking a little bit about the efforts that they have put together for the past years, and some for them actually for SDSU actually the past decades, in order to and USC as well, in order to support startup ecosystems and the emergence of a healthy startup ecosystem around their organization. Today we're here to talk about deep tech ecosystems and how the two organizations that are represented by Geeta and Paul today are actually supporting the emergence of healthy deep tech startup ecosystems here, in this case in the UK. If you have questions and so on, you can actually ask them in the chat or in the little Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and they will be answered in the end. And there you go. On my side, I am hosting those webinars, this webinar series, once every couple of months. And I'm also a program manager at Techstars, basically taking care of our ecosystem development programs across the EMEA region, so Europe, Middle East, and Africa. In the past, having done some programs in Berlin, in Saudi Arabia, and more recently in Northern Ireland, but I'm very sure that we will be talking about that a bit later. So now, to get going, the welcome has been done. I welcome all of you here. And I would love for us to get into meeting the speakers. We will discuss the topic of deep tech ecosystems during about 25 minutes to 30 minutes, and we will open the questions. So if you do have questions, prepare them and don't hesitate to go ahead. Our speakers are here to answer. I would love for Geeta to be able to introduce herself and give us a little bit of background about herself and Innovate UK. Geeta, the floor is yours.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Geeta Nathan. I'm Deputy Director of Startup Ecosystems at Innovate UK. And for those who don't know Innovate UK, we are the UK's innovation agency, and we support frontier innovation. Innovate UK is part of UKRI within the UK, which is the Research and Innovation Agency, but we are one of the councils within that umbrella. And where we focus is on business innovation. So our support supports businesses to progress in terms of commercialization of their ideas through to products and services within their businesses. So we have a large portfolio of businesses. We support both very early stage as well as more sort of developed businesses, which are sort of on their growth and scaling journey. And we have a wide portfolio of products and services that includes funding and investment, as well as a lot of support in terms of business growth and infrastructure to help early stage businesses on their journey.
Awesome. Thank you, Geeta. Paul, could you introduce yourself and also give us a little bit of background?
Yeah, sure, Emily. Hi, everyone. Delighted to be here this afternoon. So yeah, I'm Paul Donaghy. I'm head of innovation at Cubus. Cubus is the commercial and spin-out venture building arm of Queen's University Belfast. Just a bit of background of Cubis. Cubis is ranked one of the top UK universities for spin-out activity according to the Octopus Ventures Impact Ranking, and we're in the top cluster of UK universities for research commercialization according to the PACE report. We're actually 40 years in business this year. This is our 40th anniversary. Yeah, long before my time, delighted to say. But we've created, over that period, 40 companies. We've had 3 IPOs on the London Stock Exchange. Probably the most successful would be a company called Kainos PLC. So they're currently listed on the FTSE 250. And of those IPOs that went public, one company was Andor Technologies, was acquired by Oxford Instruments for about 170+ million a number of years back. And currently the Kainos valuation is worth over £1 billion. So that's just, you know, some of the outputs. My team in Cubis, we work with a range of agencies and early stage funds as well, so to develop and deliver a range of accelerator programs, and we're delighted to work very closely with Innovate UK and Geeta's wider team on the Innovate UK funded iCure program. Just prior to my time at Cubis, just a bit of background, I have a PhD in computer science, and after which I co-founded and exited a tech startup which was focusing on telecoms network management. So yeah, so delighted to be here, Emily, this afternoon.
Thank you. Great. So both of your organization, if I can get a little bit, let me stop sharing my screen in this case. I would love for us to be able to get a little bit deeper into the involvement of both of your organizations with the deep tech ecosystems. This is a word that we're hearing more and more of these past years in Europe especially, and both of your organizations have done a lot of things in order to foster deep tech within both of your ecosystems. I would love to ask you how this came about. How did your organization actually decide to focus on this topic? When did it start? And why did you think it was important? Maybe, I don't know if Geeta, you want to start with this.
So one of us, Paul mentioned, one of our primary programs to support deep tech is a program called iCure, which really is focused on supporting academic researchers to come through the cycle of commercialization. And it started 10 years ago, so we're actually celebrating 10 years of iCure this year. So in 2013, there was a government-led review, which was really looking at innovation policy in the UK. And one of the areas which was identified as a challenge was within the deep tech, particularly the UK research base, which, as many of you will know, is considered globally leading. But what we were finding was that the impact of that research was not as maximum as it could be. So the review identified what we term as the valley of death. And it identified that there was insufficient resource, and it was also highly risky. And as a result, you don't necessarily get private investors coming into this space. And where really the sort of valley of death focused was on feasibility studies, technical validation and prototyping, but also early marketing testing. So really identifying who are the customers for this innovation and where can you, and how do you market validate? So as a result of this review, iCure was launched, and the program really is, it's sort of gone through various phases, but ultimately, as I said, it is about taking an academic or a researcher within a research institution and helping them and progressing them through the early stages of really identifying where are the potential markets, who are the potential customers, and then doing the validation. So this program is really, as I said, has sort of gone through different stages, and really, we've sort of had quite a lot of success in the last, I would say, 10 years. We've had more than, I think, sort of 283 spin-outs come out of the program. Those spin-outs have led to leveraging private investment of nearly 500 million. And we've also seen more than 1,400 jobs created from this program. So we've sort of reached quite a strong position. We've also widened the number of universities that we work with. So primarily we started off focusing on the research intensive universities, and now we're sort of going wider than that. We're looking at sort of a lot of other universities, or which are less research intensive, are doing some great research. So we're now looking to broaden our scope. So that's really where I would say Innovate UK has put a lot of focus over the last decade in terms of supporting deep tech.
Hey, awesome. Actually, very, very cool. But that also, you mentioned iCure. I know Cubis is also involved with this program. So Paul, maybe do you want to take the next one here?
Yeah, so it is really important to think that kind of the role that you know, universities and sort of higher education plays in the landscape. You know, a lot of that what we think of as, you know, traditional sort of deep tech opportunities, you know, it is universities play a key role, you know, driving that entrepreneurial activity, certainly in areas such as that are strategically important to the UK. So when you look at pharma, biotech, you know, semiconductors, advanced materials, you know, how do we help universities to kind of build those ecosystems that they need to help them, you know, commercialize their the research and take it on that pathway. Where for as a university and as Cubis as a you know, a tech transfer organization, where programs such as iCure come in and where Innovate UK have really, you know, stolen march, is around that concept of, you know, when we talk about product market fit within a commercial setting, within that kind of deep tech university setting, what is that kind of research solution fit? Because you're really trying to take early stage R&D and trying to translate that from the lab into the marketplace. And what iCure has really nailed is that notion of where does that customer discovery activity fit? So, you know, when you're looking at how you develop IP-rich opportunities, you know, are you ensuring that you've got alignment with what the market needs? And having a lack of that kind of alignment in the innovation process is probably one of the main reasons that ventures, you know, fail at an early stage. It's that lack of a market demand for the product. So when you're dealing with deep tech, where there's an even longer development, you know, timeline, certainly a longer commercialization timeline, then you need to make sure you've got that product market fit, essentially, or, you know, the early signals of that product market fit as early as possible, given that it's the single biggest reason why startups and spin-outs fail. So that's really where kind of iCure has really come into the mix to kind of, you know, help researchers, universities, and TTOs to address that kind of, where is that research stroke solution fit? Can they identify where users in the marketplace can identify those solutions where their research, you know, could potentially address those challenge areas?
Okay, awesome. You have talked about a few different points, Paul and Geeta, especially when you were explaining how you started to get involved in this. Paul, you mentioned IP. This is one of the perhaps difference, that there is very IP heavy companies that really differentiate deep tech ecosystems from others. What other things would you say make deep tech ecosystems unique? And here, like, maybe founder needs, maybe actors that are different from other ecosystems in order to make it live. We see you, Geeta, as a public actor, I would say, while Paul, you're from university. Here, what would you say is quite different for this deep tech ecosystems rather than others?
Well, I'll maybe kick off on this one, Geeta. So actually, there's a really interesting, if anyone has looked up some of the work by Professor Dame Fiona Murray, just look up some of her work at MIT. She kind of coined this notion of innovation driven enterprises. So those are really kind of companies and startups that countries around the world are trying to develop more and a better quality innovation driven enterprises. So some of her work has this concept of what's the distinction between what are traditional sort of digital IDEs and this concept of what is a deep tech innovation driven enterprise. And certainly alongside that, sort of when you think of sort of more IP rich foundations that those companies are likely to have, certainly if they're coming from an academic research background, typically the pathway is going to be, there's going to be quite a lengthy technical and complex R&D pathway, and de-risking that is probably one of the number one challenges on that runway. So alongside those long development sort of timescales, that requires capital, so it's going to be expensive to get it through those various different development pathways. Alongside IP, typically deep tech will also be playing into and in some cases leveraging sort of a regulatory environment. So again, if it's within sort of biotech life sciences, it's more than likely there'll be a pretty rigid regulatory pathway that the company has to figure out. So you don't have to have all the answers at the start, but you definitely have to start to think, what does that pathway look at the various stages, and what evidence you will need to capture in the company to demonstrate to your investors and the team that you've actually got that evidence in place to get it to the next stage. Within all of that, again, given the certainly the kind of the needs for capital, there will be that investor relations piece. So again, that constant balance between fundraising, but fundraising the correct quantums that are required at the right time. So yeah, so those are the kind of and that'll change in terms of as the company develops. But those are probably the main sort of challenges, certainly that the deep tech faces, Emily.
Okay, awesome. You also mentioned during your intervention here that regulatory environments are being leveraged by startups in the deep tech industry in the different verticals that they're actually operating in. Geeta, you're from one of those regulatory environment or governmental entities. Would you have anything to add on what Paul actually had to say here?
So we don't set regulations, so we sort of inform and work with them. So we can, as we're working with technology businesses, we can identify where there are potential challenges or where I suppose the regulation needs to move in a sort of certain direction. But we don't actually set regulations. So I just want to clarify that. I just want to pick up as well on some of the points that Paul raised, was that one of the sort of, also when you're coming from an academic background and you've got, really great research, often the academic actually doesn't have necessarily the skill sets for commercialization. So one of the attributes of iCure is that it really starts to build that skill set within the academic and his team, really thinking about how do they start commercialization. So we've talked about what they need to do with their research output, but them as individuals, you're starting to build across now the academic environment, more and more researchers who have those sort of skills which really support commercialization. So I think that's sort of quite critical in terms of what iCure is doing. The other part of it, as Paul also touched on, is the investor readiness piece. So again, we have iCure, one of the sort of towards the end of the program, starts to really work with the academics and their teams as they sort of go down, for example, a spin-out route, is to work with them and to start thinking about, well, how do they then demonstrate to potential early stage investors the attractiveness of their potential investments. So it's really about, I think iCure is to, yes, take them through the journey, but at the same time, upskill them with the necessary commercialization skills. So as an organization, one of the things that we do focus on is talent and skills, really making sure that entrepreneurs, academic founders have those skills. And the other area that we're now sort of putting more attention onto is that once you have the spin out, you generate the spin out through a program, actually what's critical is it's not just generating the spin out, but it's the impact of that spin out. So we're now working with our stakeholders really to sort of partner and collaborate and signpost to really think about you've established a spin out, but now actually how do you get it to sort of start to go on its growth trajectory? So again, thinking about how do they get ready? We've talked about investor readiness, but actually helping them to sort of identify investors as well as think about the next stages of their development. So for me, that's also critical, getting access to the right support. That could, for example, we have within our portfolio of products and services, the catapults, and they also provide an opportunity for further technical de-risking, and also accessing technical expertise. So we're really thinking now about how do we bring a sort of, I suppose, more rounded offer for spin-outs.
Great. You mentioned actually the investment readiness piece. This is often a topic that we hear about when we talk about deep tech startups. The investment readiness piece is very challenging because the timelines are also different for companies, right? Would you be able to elaborate a little bit on that, on the timeline, the challenges that are also?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So again, so when you think, I think one of the challenges is when do you come onto iCure? So we tend to take sort of, I suppose, research outputs, which are at that stage of TRL 3 or 4. And by the end of going through the iCure program, if you do go on a pathway to spin outs, you're at the sort of 5, 6 range. So, and maybe 7, but really that's when we sort of is the time to that latter stage is when you start to engage investors. But that, as you said, is quite a long journey. And there will be some of our applicants who will end up actually having to go and do further technical de-risking or further research really to get them to those higher TRLs. But also we recognize as an organization that we have a role to play because there are not a huge pool of investors who are prepared to sort of come into those really early stage spin-outs. So we're now looking at pathways to really help the investor to de-risk their investment. So we have various products. One of them is our investor partnership model where we co-invest with the investor, where we provide a grant and they provide the investment into a spin out. So we're recognizing that it's still lots of challenges. As I said, once you have your spin out, that's not the end of the journey. There are still lots of challenges that face early stage businesses. So we're looking at them now. How do we start to build those bridges between investors and startups?
Techstars also has a couple of programs that are actually supporting deep tech startups and supporting those very early stage companies, spin outs, a lot of them from universities, and supporting them into also being commercial ready, right? Which was one of the topics that you also mentioned as being a challenge. And maybe what we can talk about and touch upon now, because you mentioned a lot about the iCure program, and you mentioned that this program was very successful for you, Geeta. Maybe what are the biggest successes, things that you can also, that you would like to brag about, if that makes sense, at the moment, and the biggest successes coming out of your efforts at Innovate UK? Yeah,
so I'd say the iCure program itself has had, as we said, it's been running for 10 years now, and we've had, I think, we've had over 280 spin-outs. So for that is a large success, and also the leveraged investment that has come as a result of that in terms of attracting investments. But now, as we sort of enter the next phase of iCure, we are starting, as I said, to think about those pathways. So we've recently announced that our investor partnership model will be being embedded into our iCure model. And as I said, that's a co-investment model, which brings in private investors with us providing a grant, and we take the early stage spin-outs will then have an opportunity to engage with investors. And if there is, they decide that actually this is an opportunity, both from the spin-out perspective as well as the investor, we've then now created a pathway for that. So for me, that's actually been quite a large step forward in terms of creating pathways for very early stage businesses. The other area that now also we're starting to work on within Innovate UK is that we support spin-outs, as we've talked about, but also we have several products and services that support very early stage businesses in terms of research and development businesses. And what we're now trying to do is actually build a community for that startup ecosystem. So for us, we know there are lots of organizations out there in the startup community all sort of working together, but we also recognize within the UK that this market is highly fragmented. There are many players, and actually what we really need to do now is start creating signposting and sort of hopefully partnering and collaborating together really so that the ecosystem has more impact as we go forward to support very early stage technology businesses. So we're now focusing in on that community building so that we can really sort of work together as a system, thinking about the overall impact for these businesses. So I'd say that it's sort of an emerging success rather than actually being a success, because it's something we're doing now. And we're sort of trying to really focus on community building because I think we've got the products and services. It's now the next stage.
Mm-hmm. Also involving, I can imagine, other actors than just Innovate UK, Cubis, and so on, just making sure to broaden the number of people.
Absolutely. So we want to be able to signpost. And so I was just going to add, the other thing we're also doing is that within Innovate UK, we've got lots of digital platforms. So we have one which is on No Limits, which is about thinking about talent and skills, diverse founders. We really want to create pathways for them to become innovators. And we've also got a platform which was launched this year called Investor Connect, which connects investors with early stage businesses. And we've now got a startup ecosystem connect platform, which is about really supporting very early stage businesses, either through a spin out or from an entrepreneur innovator. So we're using technology to really advance and signpost pathways for these very early stage businesses.
Mm-hmm. So Geeta, awesome. We don't hear you anymore, Geeta. I think you're now.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can. There you go.
Okay.
So you were saying, I think I missed probably your last 10 seconds.
Ah, sorry. So I was talking about the platforms. Did you hear that?
You can repeat it again. It's totally fine. This way.
So yes, sorry. So we're sort of in the last sort of 2 years, we've launched various platforms within Innovate UK, really to help signpost and really sort of provide more visibility to the innovation ecosystem. So we have a platform that's called No Limits, which is for really anybody in the ecosystem who's an entrepreneur, who's an academic founder, really to have, it's sort of bringing talent and skills as well as diverse founders so that they can find pathways into the innovation ecosystem. We also have another platform, which is Investor Connect, which joins up investors with potential opportunities in early stage businesses, as well as the Innovation Hub. Innovate UK launched about a year ago, which is really the doorway to Innovate UK. So you can find out about what services, products, funding we have available, as well as with our partners. And as you just said, one of the things we really want to do now is community build, really join up the innovation ecosystem across the different partners and collaborators. So we're using these platforms to bring people together.
That's really amazing. Paul, so Geeta, you mentioned a lot of different initiatives, No Limits, Investor Connect, iCure, all of that. Paul, I would love for you to talk about maybe some big successes in companies that have gone through Cubis, those 40 spinouts that you mentioned and those huge successes you mentioned before. What are they and what are they doing now? And what were their path of growth?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think it's there is actually different even layers of success. I mean, just, picking back to Geeta's point, I mean, working in this deep tech ecosystem in the UK, it's, seeing the level of activity increasing even over the last 10 years. I think it was, in terms of the investments, deep tech investment activity, I think it represented 5% of UK investment, 10 years ago. I think this year so far it's jumped to 22% is deep tech related. So that, is collectively for the region and the ecosystem is fantastic. And also that we're seeing for those deep tech spinouts, that those survival rates are also increasing. So, we want to create more companies. We want to have more successful companies, but we also want them to, to give them as long as a runway as possible. So those survival rates for university spinouts is now 5 year, post incorporation 5 years is 75% compared to the national average for company creation around sort of 43%. So collectively, there's kind of a lot of success in that kind of in the overall sort of ecosystem. But just doubling down on sort of specifics. I mean, for us, again, that sort of leadership role I think that Innovate play within the iCure program around building that investor community has really, and certainly the sort of the foundational work has been game changing, certainly from a Cubis perspective. So within our portfolio, iCure specifically has supported around probably about 20 new ventures within the region, securing I think around 35 million pound of investment just over the last 5-year period. So it's those sorts of building blocks that you need within the ecosystem, and then that sort of feeds directly through to company successes. At a portfolio level, we have our company overall turnover across the portfolio is now up to $500 million per annum, with somewhere in the region of over 2,000 jobs right across the portfolio. And certainly, you know, specific examples that, you know, where we've, again, with the support of Innovate UK and iCure, has had some real sort of transformational activities. With even, so I'm thinking in companies from our portfolio called, you know, Baya Analytical, which only spun out 4 years ago, went through the iCure program, and it was really leveraging some Queen's research capability around food fraud detection. So some of the you know, some of the most valuable food ingredients by weight is actually herbs and spices, and it's an area which there was huge amounts of food fraud and within the supply chain. So they were able to take some really interesting analysis, research and technology from their lab and commercialize that. So again, taking it from sort of that lab environment, but having to, through their startup, being able to kind of see how do they integrate that within a digital platform and a cloud-based platform to make that a handheld device that can be used in the field right within the food industry. So examples of that were, you know, wouldn't have happened without the iCure program, and really seeing that been integrated within the supply chain within the food industry. Again, is, you know, it's exactly the sort of impact that we like to see from UK research, you know, having that impact on the global stage.
Awesome. Geeta, you mentioned the topic of community and the topic of ecosystem as well. And that is actually very important, and perhaps the next stage of Innovate UK. Paul and I have worked recently on that very topic when it comes to the Startup Week in Deep Tech Belfast that has been organized in last July. Maybe Paul, would you like to give a few words about that topic and that particular program that was organized around this deep tech ecosystem in Belfast?
Yeah, so yeah, it was a weekend back in July that we ran, really trying to stimulate the regional deep tech ecosystem. So how do we, I mean, it was trying to support that community building, where how can we bring more founders, potential founders, entrepreneurs, along with maybe more, you know, seasoned researchers and academics, and over a weekend, can we support them with some of that team formation activity? So just trying to look at, by setting some really high level problem statements, can we get those various different segments of the ecosystem to collaborate over the space of, you know, over the space of a weekend. We had it was a huge success, certainly for the region. We were able to it attracted in some, you know, a significant number of founders from outside the region to come across for the event. We had over 65 attendees for the weekend. I think we was 15, close to 15 ventures were formed by the end. Yeah. And again, of that, we've already, you know, we've seen that those teams that were kind of formed over that period, we're now starting to signpost into, you know, other support mechanisms within the ecosystem. So so for the attendees, it was actually even being able to experience what it's like to be within that sort of startup environment over the weekend, and then also being able to help give them some signposting to where potentially what that next step on their journey would look like, whether with the university or outside of the university or into investor networks. So being able to make those connections and help that ecosystem was really valuable. I think what also is important within the deep tech ecosystem is that sort of that connectivity. And I think certainly across the UK ecosystem, we're starting to see some evidence of how connecting up those similar ecosystems can definitely work better at scale. So again, what we did at Queen's University Belfast, and starting to see how experimenting that across other regions and how other universities can help do similar similar programs, and then being able to kind of really sort of look at scale, what are the outputs and how can we better join up the those ventures.
I would perhaps add, like on the top of what Paul just said, that during this short 3 days program, those founders had the opportunity to experience as well new connections, right? At the end of the day, they had the opportunity to meet about 25 mentors from the deep tech and local ecosystems, making sure that they were set for success, and also bringing together people, just like Geeta said a little bit before, bringing together people on such a platform proved very valuable, and for the founders, for the participants, and also for their future ventures, even if the one that was formed during the weekend should not come to fruition. So I would like to maybe go for like one last question, which would be in this case, about your tips and tricks, Geeta and Paul, on building deep tech startup ecosystems. What did you wish you knew from the beginning before you started? And what were the things you would tell yourself 40 years ago, Paul, when Cubis started? What would you have told the people who started Cubis? And what kind of tips and tricks would you have given those people?
I think, yeah, that's a good question. I think the quote by Steve Blank comes to mind, that I think he said it was the amount of customer discovery and product market fit that you need is inversely proportional to the amount of risk capital available in any region. So I think certainly for regions of the UK, maybe outside that kind of golden triangle, I think it is that you can really never do too much market validation and customer discovery, and that and not just with who you think could be potential customers or partners, but also and certainly from a deep tech lens, having that engagement and discovery activity with whether it's regulators or investors, IP experts. So really getting out there, testing your value propositions, and doing that as early as possible, even if it's it's just an idea, and you're not at the stage of developing an MVP or developing a sort of a go-to-market strategy, but on the investor piece, kicking off those discussions as early as possible, even if they're introductions, conversations. You're going to need to talk to 30, 40, 50 investors probably to get one or two really interested to the point of securing a term sheet. So relentless customer discovery, Emily.
Relentless. I like that word. I'm just going to add on to maybe ask you the question also differently, because this is a great advice for founders, obviously, and for other universities that also perhaps want to put together something like Cubis, a tech transfer arm, a commercialization arm. What kind of advice would you give those universities here?
Oh goodness. So I think if you're that tech transfer function, really what you need to first of all really work closely with the research base. The better that you can develop those kind of deep relationships within the university. There'll be pockets of really active, research and world-leading, capabilities and research outputs. So trying to, build those relationships, and a lot of the time, it's not about that, they will, bring forward their innovation or invention to the tech transfer support office, fully formed, and sort of waiting for it to be kind of, 100% ready to, to explore a spin out. There's a lot of work around that engagement piece, and it's awareness raising, and so a lot of it's about building those relationships, really strong relationships, awareness raising and engagement with the research base. And through that, you'll be able to then, better understand what pieces of, potential valuable IP-rich activity and outputs which you can then kind of start to explore how best to support as a team. But yeah, definitely those kind of it's definitely a people game, but certainly at that stage.
It's ecosystem building in the end, in its own
Yeah.
right, isn't it? Okay, very awesome. Geeta, same question for you. What tips and tricks would you give to other governmental organizations, for example, that serve the same purpose as you in order to be successful?
So I think sort of Paul's spoken, I suppose, at a more of a sort of micro level in terms of where the areas of focus is. From our sort of perspective, I think it is about the sort of that macro system. And really, I think one of the sort of key areas that we're sort of recognizing over the last couple of years with, I think it's a general trend, is actually how do we bring in as many diverse founders into the system, because innovation can come from all different parts of the economy. So that recognition for us is, and sort of creating those pathways, understanding what the barriers are, understanding what the challenges are, is critical. So really, I think, thinking about those elements as well, similar to Paul, thinking about then, the types of programs. So you're really bringing early stage founders through that rigor in terms of making sure that the program, and we're constantly learning from what we are developing. So there's an iterative process. So the program evolves and learns. And then I suppose the other part is those pathways, which we've already spoken about. But then once you've got a spin out, you've got a business at an early stage, actually working across the ecosystem to sort of signpost, to partner, to collaborate, so there's more visibility. Because I think one of the challenges from the business lens is that once they're out there in that wider ecosystem, it's not always obvious what is the next stage for you, who is the next organization to support you on your journey. So how do we bring, as an innovation agency, how do we raise the visibility of the ecosystem? It's not necessarily about us doing more, etc., in terms of more products, more services, but actually there is, as I said, a lot of organizations there to support early stage technology businesses, but it's actually having the visibility for them to know where they should be, which organizations can help them. So I would say those are some of the areas that, it's really about collaborative working for us, rather than just sort of within a sort of silo and thinking, how do we manage everything, which, is not the best way to work.
100%. Okay. So from what you just said, I just have two different things that, came to mind. First, it's be serving the founder and be serving the inventor, right? With the programs that you put together. And the second one is not doing more, but doing clearer, making sure that basically the resources that are currently available be actually really available, in the sense that well communicated as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Paul and Geeta. We have actually 4 questions right now that have been asked. So I'm going to go through, here you go, all of them, if we have the time. The first one here, are deep tech startups more difficult to support than others? And if yes, then how so? I don't know if Geeta and Paul, you have any answers to give our attendee here.
Well, there's two. I suppose there's two lenses of support. I can speak from a TTO perspective. I'll maybe let Gita speak from the sort of the agency perspective. But any startup is a challenge, and it has a whole bunch of different risks. And what you're trying to do is de-risk all those various different areas. Just because it's deep tech doesn't mean it's it's any more challenging than a non-deep tech startup, but the deep tech challenges around that kind of long lead time to market, the R&D costs, the regulatory pathway, the IP landscape are just happen to be those kind of specific challenges that relate to deep tech. Fundamentally, whether it's deep tech or non-deep tech, a digital startup, etc. The challenge is about finding unique value propositions and then building a defensible business model, right? And then try if you require it, raising investment. So those are kind of the fundamentals of any business. But yeah, deep tech just happens to have the characteristics of something that looks a bit different, but doesn't make it harder, doesn't necessarily make it any easier either. So Gita?
Yeah, I fully agree with that, actually. And I'd sort of add, it's not that it's more difficult or, yes, it's a longer journey, but I think one of the, I suppose, roles as well for the community is also to think about how do we, I suppose, communicate actually the opportunities for deep tech. So I think from an investor base, there's for them to understand, actually, yes, it's a longer journey, but the upside can be as equally as attractive of, when you've got a shorter journey. So I think at the moment we're in this place where there's definitely, deep tech is a moment of very popular word, but actually understanding the journey, what's, for example, with the programs we run and what Cubis are doing, really understanding the robustness of them, so that from an investor lens, they see that actually a lot of what we're doing is sort of de-risking them. But I think that communication and really understanding what the programs are doing is probably the sort of something that would be great to sort of move forward on it more, so that the investors really get to understand that it isn't that it's higher risk, it's just a different type of investment.
Okay. So I hope that answers your question. I have another one. For a deep tech founder, what are the best ways to seek support from your organizations? We've touched upon it. Maybe if you can just, clearly give some bullet points right now about how to seek support from either Cubis or Innovate UK as a deep tech founder.
So shall I kick
yeah.
off? Oh, sorry,
Yeah, please. No, go ahead, Gita.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we've got a platform called Startup Connect, which provides different pathways. If you're coming from an academic perspective, it sort of links you into the products and service that we offer, as well as if you're an entrepreneur and innovator, again, a sort of portfolio of products and services that Innovate UK offer. But also, I think what's also important is that particularly from an academic perspective, we're widening our reach in terms of the programs we offer. So we have regional hub managers within the ICUR program who work across the UK, sort of, I suppose, collaborating with universities who've yet to embed ICUR. And so that's one opportunity that academics could have. But also on the innovator and entrepreneur side, we have our business support team, which have regional managers across the UK who are there to really help identify what support is available at a regional, within a sectoral technology basis, as well as within that wider ecosystem. So it's really, I think we've got touch points across the UK where if you are a deep tech founder, you getting in touch through these regional managers or our business growth managers is the best way to really understand what support is out there.
Awesome.
Yeah, and just on and I guess probably from a university perspective, obviously all of the above that Gita mentioned as UK founders, we've actually started to widen as well our kind of net. So we traditionally a lot of our spin-outs would have emanated from that kind of deep research base of academics, research teams. We are now widening that activity into really trying to support students and graduate enterprise a lot more, partly because the number of I think the employment totals for graduate and student startups now exceeds that of spin-outs. So graduate and student enterprise is actually a really important piece in that startup overall startup community. So I think universities generally, and particularly Queen's, need to up the game, and we're doing more in that sort of student graduate space. Also, alumni networks are really important. So again, if founders happen to have connections back through past alumni university networks, increasingly there's a lot of support available as well through those. And again, yeah, happy to if it's a particular students, graduates, alumni from Queen's, yeah, just check. There's links on the website for all of various different programs for the different groupings.
Awesome. Maybe one very last question in this case. We have two, but I'll have to make a choice. I am trying to progress on Lean Startup. What could be the main risks while using this in machine learning? What do you think? Thanks a lot from Seren. Geeta, Paul, do you have any thoughts on the use of the Lean Startup framework on a machine learning venture?
On a machine learning venture, well, I'll start by saying I think the principles are largely the same. So again, using that particular lean methodology is around that hypothesis testing of value propositions. If it happens to be around an AI machine learning model, that again needs to it has to touch the market at some point and touch users. So I guess testing that is always valuable. I guess without knowing a bit more about the model and what particular application it's trying to address, but I think even within the whole area of AI machine learning, it's that kind of, again, ensuring that you're tying in, irrespective of what your machine learning AI tech is, to ensure that it is aligning with a particular value proposition, that you're solving a particular problem at the core. I think this is really it's important.
Awesome. Geeta, maybe some thoughts on this as well, or?
No, I was going to say, I think I'm not an expert on machine learning. So I would say in general, this framework of what Paul has described, I think is applicable. And we've seen that through iCure, that we can apply the same framework to a multitude of technologies. So it's really that fundamental understanding who is your customer and working through the market and the validation of it. So I'm sure there will be specific bespoke elements for machine learning, but it's not an area that I've got expertise on.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I think we can probably stop here. Thank you very much, Geeta and Paul. For any other additional questions that haven't been answered, we'll get back to you via email. Thank you so much, dear team from Seren. So Seren, no worries at all. And it's our pleasure. I would love to thank you, Geeta, and thank you, Paul, for being here today and for supporting European tech ecosystems as you are doing, and especially in the UK, and being willing to come on to this webinar and give some insights. It was absolutely fascinating, and I wish you all a very beautiful end of day.
Brilliant.
Bye.
Pleasure. Thanks, Emily.
Bye.
Very much.
Take care.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, it started.
Great.